And a whole bunch of people go, hey, I've tried to recreate your experiment. I got completely different results than you reported and all that kind of stuff. And then they'll turn around even after all that and they'll have like all these other studies that says these studies directly conflict with everything you've said. And you'll still have people go, well, I'm going to go with that because that's the convenient study for my personal beliefs. It's like, but that's not how science works. Like, you're supposed to come up with a hypothesis. People try to prove and disprove it. I shouldn't even say prove and disprove, that's too strong. They try to support and refute it. And you'll still have people that go, well, we've demonstrated that your hypothesis is wrong, and all that. What is your view on what is your view is better than solid TDD and functional programming clean coders? So I believe one of the challenges you run into is when people sit there and go, which is better, solid TDD or functional programming? That's one problem with the argument at the very beginning, is that they shouldn't be seen as this one is better than that one. The reality is there are situations where solid approach is better. There are situations that TDD is better. And I should say TDD in software development is test-driven development. That means you write a test that says, like, I'm going to check that this code does X, and then I write the code to do X with pass-fail conditions and all that. And then functional programming is a different structure than object-oriented programming and all that. No, that's the set things in Clean Coders course. Clean Coders course, or is it all three? When you're saying Clean Coders course, like what are you talking about? Like if it's something that Martin came out with, I have no idea. But yeah, I think the solid approach to software development is appropriate for situations. I do believe TDD is appropriate for certain situations. Oh, putting all three together? I mean, the functional programming is a different thing than the other two. The other two are certain approaches to software development, but you're talking object-oriented programming versus functional programming. Those are two structures that can be determined by your programming language. If you're talking like functional programming in the sense of like Python, for example, that's what you use in Python. If you're talking C#, you're more than likely going to be using object-oriented programming as opposed to functional programming. And Sergeant says, how would you suggest someone getting into program and coding? So that's one of the things about software development and programming. You can kind of get into it from so many different ways that are all perfectly good. You can go to like a code camp and do it. I wouldn't suggest university. Like, you can if you want the degree for the value of the degree, but what you learn I do not believe will give you good value, simply because a college will say, we're going to teach you language X, and you'll go, but I want to work in Y, which uses language Y. Well, that's too bad. The college teaches you software, programming language X, and that's just the way it be. I'm going to toss all these in the freezer because we're going to switch over to our fish. Because once we drop below 75, we're going to be underweight, and I don't want to be underweight. So we're going to grab a bunch of fish, and we're going to start doing those. But I do believe it is one of the mistakes that we have often happen in our industry, in software development, that people be like, this is the way I'm going to code, this is what you use together. Like, they just kind of have these rules they make. It goes, no, you use whatever's appropriate for whatever you're doing. Yeah, and you still get the argument that's like, well, what's the value of learning software development in a college degree? And they'll be like, it's the fundamentals. And it's like, okay, whatever. So I will say with the Martin, I see that account. I immediately assume it's an account that's been created just for this discussion because someone doesn't want to be outed as supporting Uncle Bob Martin. It's not the problem with Uncle Bob Martin is that it's solid, it's functional, it's TDD, stuff like that. That's not the problem. It's like the specific code examples Martin gives in his courses. Some of them use strategies that, again, were at the time that that course or that book was made, were what we did. Like they were appropriate. But over time, these specific examples presented we found better ways of approaching a lot of stuff. So it isn't that like there's something wrong with solid, or there's something wrong with TDD, or there's something wrong with functional programming or object orienting programming or any of that. It's just the specific examples provided no longer align with how people typically code those things, if that makes sense. And that's where I got into the phrase patterns versus anti-patterns. So like in a lot of ways, using your global variables, for example, can be an anti-pattern. That's probably being a little overstating. It's not really a pattern, but an anti-pattern, because it can trap you into so many problems. When you're saying UB, what are you referring to in this abbreviation? Right. That's the point, Whistlebeak. At the time that Uncle Bob came out with the book, there's not something wrong with the book. I want to be clear, like that book was perfectly fine when it came out. The issue that came out is that a lot of those are very out of date things. Yeah, and to be clear, you're by far not the only one. Like the company I was working for, we also had clean code around, and actually got to the point that not even getting into it being Uncle Bob or anything, that individually we started saying, hey, let's stop using it. I don't have the name of the books handy, but there's a long list of books. I wish I had it handy for you, because there's a good 3 or 4 excellent books for coding nowadays recommended in Rata. Cool. It was just with the whole, it said Martin and just the context, I'm like, because unfortunately there are people who you'll discuss something, they'll make an account real quick, and all that. So that's all I was checking. Like I didn't, I know I mentioned it, but I was like, if I thought it was like 100% that, if I had someone in the chat who's like, I want to talk about a topic, but I don't want to like own up to talking about the topic kind of thing, I probably would be like, hey, like stand up for yourself kind of thing with that. Like if it's a topic where they're clearly vulnerable or something, that's a different story. Yeah, Little Bears has a good example. Starting off with something small, it's really good if you can have, I want to solve a problem, and make it something simple, like a really, really simple, small problem. One thing that people will get themselves in trouble with a lot when they're trying to learn is they'll go, I'm just going to start off with this one little thing like making an MMORPG, and you're going, you might want to reevaluate what you're doing. But I would have to look up the books on what's to date, because like I used to have a list, but there's a good like 3 or 4 books I'd recommend, and they're just kind of more up to date. Could you give set examples of simple projects? Okay, so like a to-do list would be a very simple thing, where all you do is you'd sit there and have like a singular input field. You type something in, you push a button, and it appears in a list. You type in the next thing and it appears in a list. You type in the next thing and it appears in a list. You click on like a checkbox and it disappears from the list. So all you're really doing is adding and removing from the list. And that would be a good example of a very simple project. And it's still, you're storing information, whether it's you're storing in text file or database or whatever. And we're basically killing time because the weather's crap. I'm just going to shove this fish in our mouth. You can have something that parses text. So you have like, you get a file that's got some like comma delimited stuff, and all you do is you parse it. You can make a silly little program that, you run it, it says, okay, like type in a message, hit this here, send it, whatever. Like if you're looking at a website, you can start with something that's like, you start with like a static page that's just, you put something on the screen. And then you go from there and you say, okay, well now I have something on the screen. Let's add a button that does one kind of thing. Like you get the ideas. You start with something super simple and you add to it. There are people who like their starting project is they'll like create like a thing where you can post a message to a feed kind of thing. So it's like a really, like it's not like a proper Twitter, but it's just like a messaging thing. It is learning how to do those various interactions, like how do I access an external system? What am I doing right now? Like what should I be working on? Because I guess I can work on, first of all, I need to see that the helicopter's coming or not, because we haven't listened to a radio today, and we have not had a helicopter day, and we are very due for a helicopter. So we're going to make that happen. But yeah, there are lots of like coding tutorial type websites, and you have YouTube videos that go into coding tutorials. Those can be excellent. You can try going and making like super duper simple games, like text-based games. Right, little bears. It is hard to tell. Like it's the joke. If you're someone who's not in software dev, like the difference between something you can code in an afternoon and something that's going to be 5 years and require a research grant of millions of dollars and a team of 50 people, people don't always know where the line is between those two extremes. Like the joke is, I want an app that I can take a picture. Cool, can do that probably in an afternoon. And I want to take that picture and be able to post it on something. All right, that's probably not too bad, maybe a day or two. And then I want to be able to have it identify what bird is in that picture. Okay, now you've gone from an afternoon to multiple years worth of work. I mean, not nowadays, but at the time that example came up. But it's like you're now talking a very, very complex program. Yep, XKCD. 100% XKCD. Is that actually the number for it? If you just know that number off the top of your head, I'm both impressed and terrified. You think Flickr actually did that? Who knows? Ah, you Googled it. It's like, yep. Yep, 100%. XKCD has everything. Alright. Oh, you know what we'll do? I know how we'll do with this. Since we're not looking at a helicopter right now, we have axes in this vehicle. I need boards. I have axes that I want to get rid of. These two things can be worked together. I need my saw. Oh, here, let's put this extra weapons in there. Oh, XK, like, one of the jokes is, if it exists, XKCD covers it. Like, it's just the way it is. I am also a really big fan of, they have a poster that's like all the parts of the, I think is the Apollo 11 mission rocket, like all of that, but using only the 1,000 most common English words or whatever it is. So it's like, if this, you know, it's like pointing at things like, if this is pointing anywhere but down, yeah, pointy end goes up, flamey end goes down. If flamey end points up, rocket will not be going to sky today or something like that. It's like absolutely fantastic. It is a good time. There's also, XKCD has a section called What If. The premise of What If is just you'll ask a ridiculous question and they will just go through the whole thing of like doing all the math, as it were. And all of it's like just absolutely ludicrous. Where is my saw? Where did I put my saw? Don't do this to me, game. Where did my saw go? This is what I get for not having a bunch of them. Because I was like, I have a saw. Why would I need a bunch of saws? You can only ever use one saw. So it's not in my main pouch. It's not my backpack. It's not my fanny packs. Dear game, can I have search? Trunk? Oh, it's in the truck? Did I leave it in the truck? That is probably the place I should be checking. Yeah, XKCD. What if you had a mole of moles? That one gets upsetting. There you are. Thank you, everyone. Oh, that's right. Because I had all those things and they were heavy, and I'm like, I don't want to carry these. They're heavy. Right. Thank you. That happens sometimes, where you're just like, I put a thing somewhere and I don't remember where the thing went. Yeah, and if it's in the corpse, like by where the trunk was, I'm just going back to the tool shop and grabbing another saw. Because I will never find that corpse. Because it would be good to start clearing these trees out. And like I said, we had really bad fog for the first half of the day, so that kind of messed stuff up. We are unfortunately looking at having a nasty storm in game here pretty soon. Yeah, the corpse would still be here at this point, because it's 9 days and we've probably had 2 days, I would guess, since we flipped the car. Yeah, so you do want to try and do this kind of periodically. You'll notice I went and I've cleared the trees away from the outside of my building. That's because I could have zombies up here, like a full-on horde just chilling up here. So you want to cut the trees away, make sure you can see the zombies. I'm definitely a firm believer of knowing where the zombies are, like, before they know where you are kind of thing. And that does require some effort of maintenance. Plus, I have too many axes. I have over 20 fireman axes. And I probably have half a dozen, or probably a dozen, I would guess, hand axes. And so this is probably the incorrect approach, but usually when I chop down trees, I just push myself super exhausted. Yes, this is a problem. You notice we are hyperthermic at this point. So it doesn't actually like kill you or anything, but if I were to get into a fight, our character's attack speed would be, when I say super slow, we're talking like it would be the slowest thing you could think of, just about. Actually, we can see if we can get it to swing. Yeah, so that's pretty terrible. You can imagine if I'm in an actual fight, I'm going, ugh. That's not going to go well. And I'm going to box it in, because we're going to keep having bad weather from time to time. So it's like, I want to have big, grandiose projects to work on to just kill time at times. Because it's something we're going to have to keep doing again and again and again. So this is one reason why I chuck stuff in the trash can. If I don't want it, I hit delete all and it's gone. So now I can put the X in. And it's excellent. Yep, so just working our perimeter. Gonna get this going. Because we start today with thick fog. Tomorrow in game, I believe we have... I think it's just a severe thunderstorm. I don't think it's a tropical storm. Because you actually do get tropical storms in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do. Which is just, it's like a slightly worse severe thunderstorm. The point is, you don't want to be out in it. So these are days we just work on like skills and that kind of stuff. I haven't been really working on my skills lately so much as just expanding the base. Because honestly, when it comes to like my trade skills and that, like we're gonna get the farming by itself, and then the mechanical and metalworking, I don't feel a need to destroy all my stuff to try and like level it up right now. I can just keep fixing my car and eventually we'll get there. But yeah, and I'm just planning on like probably boxing in from this side and just making like a huge perimeter thing. But then I'll have a double doors here for the cars to drive in and out of. Because then if I also do this, I don't have to worry about zombies getting in here at all. I don't like being this close to these trees. Which is why the moment I finished hammering that, I immediately turned around and walked away. Just checking some real fast. Yes, I use the primary use you have for the scrap wood is you can put in stuff like grills and antique stoves and fire pits and all that for fuel, and it actually is a pretty solid fuel that burns for a good long time. Kind of circling back to some of the books that go. So I remember one of them was Fundamentals of Software Architecture was a good book. I'm trying to pull up some of the other ones. You had, I believe, The Pragmatic Programmer was that one. I think Code Complete had a new version that was good. Now these are just trying to go by like pulling up a list real fast and going, oh yeah, what were they? I remember we had at my last company, we had like a list of the books we recommended. And for the record, the company I was at, we were teaching software development, and we weren't like book publishers or anything. Little Bear said, I learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript at W3 school. Yeah. No, that's like some of the ways that people learn is one, you'll either go to like some type of formalized course, whether it's college or a boot camp or coding challenges or whatever. You'll have some that you kind of just look up your own, like, you say, I want to do, and you'll come up with some idea, and you'll look up tutorials and whatever that subject matter is on, YouTube, whatever, or you'll go to like some formal place, like you have LinkedIn Learning, Pluralsight, Code School when that was still around. What's the other one? There's a few. Is Treehouse still around? Treehouse was another one. Yeah, formal education will have usually a course on the actual programming language, like whatever their programming language they teach you. But I do agree that formal education, like so far as university goes to, is really kind of their whole thing is they say we teach the fundamentals. I'm sorry. Discrete math, calling that fundamentals, and being able to make your own sorting algorithm is not a good use of your time. Do you know what I do when I want a sorting algorithm? I use the built-in sorting algorithm for whatever technology I'm using because we all, like, no matter what stack you choose, they will have a built-in sorting algorithm that has been fine-tuned for that technology. Does it mean for a special use case you might be able to come with better? Probably. But usually you're trying to get, like, the teeniest, tiniest, littlest, like, performance improvement that is wholly irrelevant because you take the look at any of your other coding decisions and the performance implications will be far more significant than, you know, you manage to bleed out a tenth of a nanosecond by, you know, tweaking the algorithm to be more form-fitting. Like the only place that I found sorting, like being able to know the difference between different sorting algorithms and that kind of crap was useful in my career is gatekeeping interview practices where they put you in front of a whiteboard and they say draw out how you would implement a, you know, this sorting algorithm, or how you would do a bubble sort on the whiteboard. And one, it's like, first of all, as an industry, we've determined that those type of coding challenges are one of the worst interview practices you can have for actually finding quality people. Like, all right, you can regurgitate information. It doesn't mean I can code out of a box. And then you're also like, okay, well, we're just going to take the environment that you'd normally work in and just not provide you that. And there's all people like, but rail coders use, you know, VS Code or Vim or whatever. You're going, what? There's always use cases. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but it's like those. I got to the point when you'd have those types of coding interviews that they're like, you know, show us how you'd implement a bubble sort using C# on the whiteboard. And I would remove, like, I would actually sit there and go, I am retracting my consideration for this career because, you know, because clearly you're way out of date. Like, the industry knows this crap is crap by now. Catch up. Yeah, we use SQL and we do sort ascend and descend. Yup. Because most of the time you sort, it's going to be by the numeric value or the alphabetical value, like alphabetical order. Those are the two most common. You will have some stuff you start doing other sorts and all that, but who cares? But even then, when you go into the strategies on how you sort things in the background, it's not like you sit there and you think, well, I'm going to use a bubble sort, I'm going to use this sort. And it can be interesting for academia side of it to go, here's why you use this sort over that sort. Like, here's the pros and cons, and sure. But ultimately, when you get down to the technology, say, I want to do an alphabetical sort, you don't care. Someone's already done the homework to figure out which was the best, which is why you're not doing it yourself, because someone else has done the legwork. You know, we get into stuff like the principles of don't repeat yourself and all that. One of those is, if someone's already done all the work for you, why are you doing it? Yeah, my manager would yell at me if it took me 2 weeks to figure out which sorting method to use. Your job is to close JIRA tickets. I do not miss the days of JIRA. Like, don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people still do it. Like, I remember working in the office where it's just JIRA, it's like, go to the backlog. And especially because a lot of those companies, that's like, go to the backlog. It's like, well, what are the priorities? Everything is 1, except for that one, which is 2, which means 2 will never be done. But everything else is 1, like, so nothing is 1. Literally, it's just do whatever the manager says. I need you to grab this ticket, otherwise it doesn't matter. I do love the anime or anime Padme and Anakin meme where it's like, hey, go ahead and put that in the put that in the backlog, and it's Padme going, oh, so we can we can do it later, right? And just Anakin smile. It's like, so we can do it later, right? The backlog is where everything goes to die in dev. If it goes in the backlog, there's a good chance it will never see the light of day. And for those who aren't aware of it, the backlog, when you're talking about software dev, it's a list of all the tasks you do. Generally, it's the wish list of, if you had infinite time and resources, all the things you would do. But it's a to-do list, and if you think of any to-do list that has an impossible number of things on it, you can imagine what happens to most of the things on the impossible to complete list. They don't ever happen. And in half the time you'll actually and this is something I actually recommend companies do, and people go, it is worth at the end of your year or end of the quarter or whatever, going to the backlog and just going, okay, is the person who wanted this still at the company? No. Is there any driving force behind this that we should actually do this? Probably not. Get rid of crap from your backlog. Yeah, groom your backlog.